and you take it off, and now you've got a naked portafilter at the bottom. Tried other ones, didn't work. This one is the first one, it worked, but it's had a lot of field experience of a lot of different situations.
Welcome to
Bean Stuff.
Today, well, first of all, I guess it's our first episode in a little bit, but today we are talking about.
What are you talking about? Like years?
I think it has been maybe 2 or 3.
Let's go there.
But today we're going to be talking about the Picopresso from Wakako. Is that how you say it, Dad?
That sounds good to me.
And for the people who don't know, what is can you give us a general, maybe a high level, what is the Piccopresso?
Okay. The Picopresso, I came across, I don't know, a few years ago now, when it was very new and everyone was trying to have espresso outside away from a machine, which is very difficult to do, they found. And I suddenly came across the Picopresso that I tasted it and I couldn't believe in this little, like the size of my fist, 350 grams, it made espresso. I mean, I actually went, wow, this tastes good. This is how it should taste. And
for anybody who's watching a video, do you have the Picopresso?
Oh, I do. Here it is right here. And it's just, that's it. See my fist right next to it? Look at that, mate. And it gets a little larger when you do this. And that's that little pressure there. That's going to give you your 18 bar of pressure.
Wow. So it's essentially a handheld travel. I mean, you can do it at home too, but a handheld espresso machine that allows you to get the quality of what you might do at home on the road. Is that accurate?
It is accurate.
And what's required with this one as far as, do we need any power? Do we need battery? Things like that. Like what is kind of involved with it?
The good thing about this, and there's some negatives we'll share in a moment, but the good thing about this, it needs no cord. See, it's not a trick. It's got no battery, so you don't have to, recharge it. You don't have to put an actual AA in there or a double D, whatever number you want. And it's also like this. It's when you get it, it's like opening up, I don't know, a really high-end little machine because everything is so well thought about where it is. I was just going to say, you take this little thing off here at the bottom of it, and now you've got the portafilter, and it comes through that little knot there. But I can take that off as well, and it becomes a naked portafilter if I could get that off. It's just so, I will show that in a bit, but you take it off, all these little bits and pieces, and you take it off, and now you've got a naked portafilter at the bottom, which I like.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's impressive too. It's got a quality feel to it, so it feels nice, and even like little things like the thing where you just thread it in. The threads are very coarse, so there's not cross threading and things like that. So it does feel very well designed and executed, and it feels like you're not buying. Like I think that was one of the things when you first started getting it, is it almost looks like it could be a toy or a gimmick.
Yes.
But it really isn't. It does have a lot of that quality, a lot of that kind of what you're
quality.
Looking for out of coffee.
That's what I was impressed with. I thought, like yourself, I thought, oh dear, what have I done here? Have I wasted my money? I think it was $100, like a Kickstarter almost, but I think it's $129 even now. But I thought, wow, this is worth it.
Well, and I know we'll get into this a little bit more, but just right off the top, if someone decides not to listen any further, do you like it or do you not like it? Can you give us a scale, maybe just yes or no, whether you like it or not as an espresso machine? I
do. I tried other ones, didn't work. This one is the first one, it worked, but not only worked, it was impressive.
That was perfect. It's almost sounded like an infomercial.
I haven't been in contact with them. They know nothing about this.
And I think for obviously nobody else knows. Well, other people know, but not anybody who's probably listened to the podcast in the last 2 years. Mostly because we haven't had one. But
difficult.
Yeah, but tell us how. I guess can you talk about where have you gone with this? Where has your field testing taken you?
Oh, mate, local and international. It has been on planes. It's been in other countries like Italy. I don't know why we were in Italy. It's been in England. It's been. I've had it around the States. I even took it to New Zealand most recently. And and it's had a lot of field experience of a lot of different situations of what I need to take and what I've forgotten to bring. Particularly when I go metal detecting with my wife, my favorite thing is to take my Piccopresso and read a book with an espresso. But I have to write a list out now to say, oh, don't forget to take this and this and this. Otherwise, you get there and you go, oh, I'm just going to read. I can't have any coffee. Oh, no, woe is me.
And for someone who's, I mean, number one, you've traveled a lot with it, which is kind of, I think it's pretty cool. And we've even got a video of you on a plane making a Picopresso, which I'll link in the show notes. But have you ever had any trouble with any of the security or anything like that getting your Picopresso through, or is it always pretty straightforward?
I am surprised I haven't, because this little Picopresso, when you take it all apart, it looks very interesting and almost like, what is this? This is some sort of gadget that's going to hurt people. I don't know. But no, fortunately, even taken it in my carry-on so I could make these Picopresso at whatever, 40,000 feet, whatever. And I was able to get it through. I got nervous coming back home. I suddenly thought that was probably silly. So I put it in my luggage so I could actually get it home with me.
But like you said, when we were even in Italy, there were, the nice thing is it doesn't matter what's going to be at your final destination, whether it's an Airbnb, a hotel, or someone else's house. You know that you're bringing quality with you, which is really great to see that in such a small package as well.
Yes. Yeah, it's true. And like when we went to Italy and we went to England for a week, we actually had 2 weeks there because we had this thing happen to us called COVID and we weren't allowed back home to the States.
Heard of that one.
But it's all right because we were in a hotel. What wasn't all right, I couldn't get espressos in London. There's a few good shops you could get espresso from in London. But I was locked in a hotel. But guess what? I had my Picopresso in my room. Yeah. So I was happy. Not totally, but I was happy.
Yeah, you were happy on the coffee front.
That's right.
And
right.
I think, and especially for me, I mean, until I had one from the Picopresso, I think it was a little bit hard to maybe believe in some ways just because of how compact it is.
I know.
But you've been doing some testing recently. How does it match up against like a really good espresso machine?
Good question. And that's been the problem in the past with these little travel type espresso machines. I took it to work just a couple of days ago and we tested it with our La Marzocco and we did, the roaster did one on the La Marzocco and I did one on the Picopresso and we tasted them both and they were both good, slightly differently why they were good, but that's all part of how much came up, your ratio, and just how it worked on the La Marzocco and how much it worked on this. But we were both, and the roaster had never had one before, said, this is good espresso.
Yeah.
So it really matched up. You're talking about, as I said, $129 versus whatever, $10,000. It was worth it.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's the crazy part too, is 129 versus 10,000. Now there are some things that it doesn't have, obviously, or quite a few things I should say.
Yeah.
But I think that's for anybody who is doubting that it makes good coffee, it does make good coffee. Yep. And I know we've got some things to be aware of and some tips, but I wanted to check real quick. I guess what's your impression of getting used to it? Did it take a long time before you could make good coffee through it, or was it a pretty quick adjustment?
It in between, can I say it wasn't as quick as I thought because you have to press this. I've suddenly realized you can press with your fingers or you can turn it around and press it with your thumbs, and I have to do both now because my fingers get tired, my thumb gets tired, and you've got to keep pressing it to keep it coming through at 18 bar pressure. So that was important. What was your question again?
Oh, just how long did it take you to get used to the process to make good coffee? Yeah.
And the other part we'll go into this a little bit more, but the other part was the grinding. That's probably what took me the longest, was to get a grind, and you have to have a good grinder that does espresso. Otherwise, because this is like a real espresso machine, it'll just come through and it won't taste very good. So that was the hardest part for me, was having the grinder. And I got one actually from Australia. It's called a Vario. That did actually really putting the coffee in. It did enough. The trouble was with the Vario, you've got, as all good manual grinders, you've got all these settings down here. And And it took a lot of trial and error to get the right grind, because you have to do it all. And that's sort of one of the negative sides. If it's negative, I don't know. That once you do one, you got to clean it all out again to do the next one. It's not fast.
Yeah.
But now I've got it set up in here, and I put in the same coffee each time. It's a little more likely that you'll get a regular, the calibration will be correct. Like it was at work just yesterday with the calibration. I only had to do it once, and it came out perfect.
Yeah, and I think that's a good point to bring up, is if you are calibrating, it's not, I mean, not that an espresso machine is like the easiest thing in the world, but it's a lot easier than having to do a manual, pump through it, set it all up, clean the machine, or
reheat the water. There was so many things you had to do. Yeah, which is one of those tips I'm coming to. The space, you do need a little space and a sequence to make this espresso, and that's where the general espresso machine, it's not so hard. You're standing in a room and you can make it.
It's like the best way I can think to describe it is it's a very disassembled coffee machine, because you've got a lot of things separately. You've got the jug for the water. You've got all sorts of stuff. You've got the espresso machine. You got it's almost like every part of your espresso machine, but just separated on the table.
That's right. You've got to put it all together for the next drink, and then take it all off to clean it, and then put it all back together again.
Yeah. And the other thing I think that I noticed was the speed. You have to be quick to get it to where you don't have to be quick, but you have to be organized and know your process in order to get a cup of coffee or like an espresso that is still warm and hot enough and kind of at the right temperature when you're drinking that.
Exactly. If you wait too long, the water is cooled down, and then you have it and you get everything else right. You pump it away and you get it on your little scale. It comes out a great ratio, but it tastes horrible because the water wasn't hot anymore because you took so long to make it.
Well, and I think it brings us into the first, the kind of buyer beware or more notification. But and I think that's hot water, right?
That's right. You don't think about it, but you need hot water.
And that's the challenge. This doesn't have any way of doing that.
Nope.
On its own,
which is why it doesn't have any cords, because there's nothing that heats up in this thing. And so I have found when you're at 40,000 feet, what do? You ask the flight attendant.
That's good. That's good.
They think you're just having a hot water or a cup of tea, but no, you're making an espresso.
That's a good point, because you can get tea, you can get coffee there. So obviously they have hot water. Just say, hey, I'm getting hot water, and then
I guess you could go somewhere locally and say, could you get me hot water and put it in here, please?
Yeah.
And otherwise, you need obviously a jug, a kettle, and you can either you need a jug or kettle to put the water in the top part of this to make the espresso. If you want to make it into an Americano, which you can, or a long black, you need hot water again to fill up your espresso on top of your espresso. So again, you need hot water. You need something to make hot water. Therefore, I have a little gas propane that I take when I was saying I go metal detecting with my wife, and I have a gas propane that heats up water. So I have a little kettle on top of it, and it heats up. Then I get a rolling boil, put it in, I'm done.
Yeah. And I think that's where, like we talked about the deconstructed coffee machine, because now you have to have some type of vessel for the water.
I tried taking it in a thermos. I
was going to say, what's your experience with the thermos? Is that a yes, or is it good, or is it bad, I guess?
More towards the bad. Again, well, it depends how good your thermos is, but in all this process of deassembling and stuff, it can be a little cool. You can't get boiling water from a thermos.
Sure.
But you can get it pretty hot, and if that's what you have to do, not a problem.
I think the other, there's more, but this isn't to say that it's bad. It's very good. But another challenge is there's no way to steam your milk, obviously.
Yes, you suddenly realize that you make this beautiful espresso, and then you realize, I'm so used to having cortadas or flat whites. I don't normally, not a lot of people have a straight shot of espresso. I don't mind it.
Yeah.
But sometimes you just want it to go last a little longer. And you read a few sentences and you've had your shot. I want to read my whole book and sort of savor it. So in that one, therefore, if I do want hot milk, there's lots of ways to go about getting hot milk. When I was at my brother-in-law's in Wellington, in Auckland, in New Zealand, he actually had a bigger, larger espresso machine and had a wand that I could just heat the milk in his wand on his espresso machine.
Yeah.
Funny enough. I didn't use his espresso machine because it wasn't as good as my Picopresso.
Easy now. He might listen to this.
Sorry, Marcus. But I
you can bum off of somebody else's steam wine if
exactly.
You need to.
That's really what I'm saying. Or you can buy these fancy little. I enjoy them. There's one I got. It's called a Maestro House. It's a frother, so you put milk in, it heats it up, and it froths it.
Yeah.
The good
it's
one
like it's almost it spins. It's a little almost like an electric whisk.
Yep, exactly. And not a lot of them you don't know what the temperature is going to be again. So this one, the Maestro, you can get this one. You can have 120, 140, or 160 Fahrenheit, and you can choose what temperature. I like that. The other way to go, and this is a little more tricky. It's called a Bellman. They've been around forever.
Yeah.
And it's again goes on your propane and heats up the water, and it looks like a pot with a little steam wand coming out of it.
And it looks like almost like something you would boil water in, but a little bit more.
Yep.
Something combination between like a steam engine inside of a train and something that you would boil water in at home.
Correct. And both those things is quite dangerous. It's a little quirky, but it works. The steam comes out. It's wonderful. And then guess what? You've got to bring some milk, which could curdle, could do all sorts of things. But if you've thought about this and you're going to be in a short-term situation, you can have your little container to put your milk in and steam the milk like you normally do on an espresso machine.
So here's a question. When you've gone metal detecting, have you ever gone metal detecting and brought the steamer as well as hot water so that you've made the espresso, steamed the milk, and made everything essentially on the go?
Mostly, usually.
Wow.
I know. Like I said, you almost need to, I do have a little list on my phone to remind me what to bring because it gets quite complicated at that point.
Yeah.
Sometimes
grinder,
grinder, milk, everything. And you can even get those fun little things. You can buy that aerate milk. They look like a little whisk, like you're saying, that you just push, which it does that, but you've got to have the milk hot first. It doesn't heat the milk, but you can get some hot milk, and you could do it in a microwave even, and then you use that little portable sort of hand frother.
It's almost like you can do it in two stages. One is you could do it at home, so maybe it's 3 stages. One is at home where you've got everything there. Number 2 is you go to like an Airbnb or a hotel where you've got most of your things there. And then number 3 is you go complete off the grid.
Yep.
And you have to bring everything with you.
Yeah. The good thing, you're right. And even though you're bringing all that stuff with you, I've even taken I've an espresso, an ECM espresso machine here at home. I've even picked that up and put it in the car and taken it to places to Airbnbs and things. This is certainly much easier than my bigger espresso machine to take with me. And it works just as well.
And so so we know some things, obviously you don't have hot water, you don't have milk, you could bring milk, but you can't froth it, easy things like that.
Yep.
Do you find that there's any finesse, or I guess, can it be a little bit fiddly, a little bit finicky? Like, is there any challenges with that side of it?
It is fiddly because basically you need some space. And when we keep talking about metal detecting, when I go, there's usually there's a picnic table where Rachel's is doing somewhere at a school or somewhere. There's a picnic table. I set myself up and I've got to have it sort of logically what comes next because I'm worried about it cooling down. So I start heating the water in the Billman or whatever, and then I get this all set up. Then got to grind first because this is going to take a while to hand grind.
Right.
And then you've got to fill your little machine here. You take the hand grind and you put it in here. In this little part of the unit, and then you take this top bit off the unit, which is really hard because they make it hard because it's got a lot of boiling water. You take it out, and what do you got in this machine? In here you got your little WD. It's a pretty pathetic little thing to go around the ground coffee. Make sure.
Distributor.
Yeah, and this then is the little tamper. And it has in the top of this, another little thing pops out, and you put it on this. This is where you got all these little bits and pieces that you've disassembled, and now you're trying to put them all back together again. It goes on top like that. You put your coffee in here, your ground coffee from your grinder in here, and then you put this on top, or you do your little distributing, This one goes on top, temps it down perfectly. I mean, it all fits so nice.
And all of that comes with it, like the tamper, the distributor,
Yep, it's all in this machine. It's just amazing how it's all in there.
Yeah.
And then you take that little top bit off because it's been tamped now. And now you've got to very carefully put this is the screen on top of your coffee. And now then you've got to very carefully, without spilling the coffee now, you can see why it gets a little sort of, tricky.
Yeah.
And you don't want to spill it and get it threaded the wrong. I'm just trying to get this in here. I'm not sure why. Okay, it's because I'm trying to put it at the wrong end. That's why.
There you go.
There you go. Like fits much better. Now it's in there. And now the next thing you got to think about is hot boiling water to go in this top bit here.
Yeah. Yeah. So there's definitely a lot of process to that.
So you do. I like to have it all lined out on my table on a towel or something, so I don't miss one step, because it's easy to do one thing and get so excited by it that you forget. Oh, I haven't boiled the water yet. I'm going to have to wait.
Yeah. Well, and in that process, and obviously you've done it quite a few times, but are there any tips or tricks that you have that have either smoothed out that process or that you've just learned throughout, your various
that's a good question.
Attempts?
I've learned when I get the hot water, I put it in here once. I put this cap on, that's the only thing. It's just that's always got to make sure you get that on right. And then I do a hot water, like a pre-hot water, and put all the way through just to warm everything up there. I take that top back off and I tip it out, any leftover water. Then I put the next set of hot water in for the real espresso now, because you put that hot water in, and now you've got to put your coffee back in here. You don't want the coffee in there for your trial hot water to get it all warmed up. But and the other thing, it sounds funny. I think it could be I'm getting a little older, but this little thing here, I got these cheap on Amazon. They come with
and that's just like a rubber mat that you can help to open stuff a little easier, grip things.
I've even had young men, younger than me, try and get this off. And when it's hot, it's hot. And as well as that, it's expanded. And you need a little rubber thing like this to get that top off. And that's been really helpful.
Yeah. That's good to know. And I think the other thing to keep in mind is all the other aspects of coffee and espresso come with this one as well, in the sense that we need whole beans. Those need to be good whole beans.
Correct. Yeah.
You mentioned it earlier as well, but you need a good grinder that can go fine enough for that, for the Pico.
Yep.
And then you also need to make sure you dial things in, preheat stuff. Yeah. So that makes sense.
And I find a scale is not a bad thing. I always use a scale when I'm making espresso anyway, so you can get your 1-to-2 ratio correct. You can know you've got 36 seconds grams out, and you've done it in 30 seconds or whatever. So I find it a little scale that enables me to time that. It just makes that coffee, when it touches your lips at the end of this whole process, like, that was good. This is good.
Yeah. Well, I think the only other question I can really think of is, obviously we've talked about travel. When you talk about travel, how do you pack all this together? What does that look like for you?
Partly so don't forget something, because that was my problem I was saying, but also to protect it, because this is a nice little machine. What I've done, I went online and found the measurements and bought myself, I've got it right here actually. I bought this little
almost like a Pelican case, like a hard shell plastic.
Yep. It comes with all this, and you do all these cutouts in it. And and I fit in there, oops, that's gone. Fit my grinder. It fits in there really nice. I get my cup. By the way, the cup, I like this is a double walled cup because of heat again. It's good to have something that just keeps it warm. I preheat that with hot water, tip the hot water out, then put the espresso in. But that just fits in my case right there, like so. And the Pico fits in down here, and you close it up. You take it on the airplane, wherever you're going, and it's all there. I even put my scale, like a little scale that fits in this as well.
Yeah. No, I think it makes sense. It's like, like you said, having everything in there that you need, so that when you get there, it's just a matter of opening up the case and then using it. I do say make a list though, because that little case doesn't carry everything, and you forget, milk, water, whatever. And you need to, I like to tick it off, make sure when I get somewhere I've
I've got everything I need.
No, that makes total sense. Well, I thank everybody who tuned into this episode, and it's been in a little bit of a time. But thank you for joining us on this episode of the Bean Stuff Podcast.